Okay, call to order this Board of Education meeting for Piqua City Schools for November 18th, 2021. Welcome, everyone. So, roll call with Mr. Hill.
Mr. Height.
Here.
Mr. Frazier.
Here.
Mr. Ford.
Here.
Mr. Boston.
Here. Okay, you'd all please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, with that, we'll get started by asking for a motion for approval of the minutes for the October 21st, 2021 regular Board of Education meeting.
So moved.
Okay. Second? Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Negative, same sign. Okay, measure passes. Okay, and approval for tonight's agenda, we need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Negative, same sign. Okay, measure approves.
Do we need to approve the November 7th as well, the work session?
They both at the same time.
Was that both okay?
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to move on. We've got an addition here we're going to put at the top of Part B here. We have Mr. Barry Alberts from Wayland Ventures, or Wyland? Wayland, okay, thank you. And Chris Smeezing. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours for a presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I'm Chris Smeezing. I'm the City Piqua Community and Economic Development Director.
Okay.
Close enough.
Okay.
And thank you for allowing us to have some time here this evening. As you mentioned, with me is Barry Alberts from Wayland Ventures. I've gotten to know Barry over the past several years and working with him on a couple different initiatives that the city engaged him to work on. And through that, began to know more about their firm and the work they do. And I've come to realize that they're probably one of the highest regarded firms in our region. So we're very excited to have him take an interest in an opportunity to do a project in Piqua. And what he has here to present to you this evening is something that through our comprehensive planning efforts and subsequent planning exercises, we think is a very good fit for our community needs as it relates to our housing stock and diversification of the portfolio and the different types of products that are available. So it's an area where we know we need additional emphasis, and we've got some folks who are interested in doing some things, Wayland Ventures being one of them. So the site that they've taken an interest in is a site that the school district controls. So I'll just leave it at that and hand it off to Barry so he can share with you what it is they would like to do here. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Good evening. Just for the record again, my name is Barry Albert. I'm with Wayland Ventures. We're from Louisville, Kentucky. And as Chris said, we've been involved in Piqua for the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so, helping Chris with the downtown revitalization. We're working now with him on South Piqua, and we really like the community and are always looking for ways that we could either add value to a community that we're working in or do something our own as a development firm. Just as background, we're from Louisville. We are primarily an urban development firm. We work in Louisville. We're working in Dayton. If you know the Wheelhouse Project, that's our project. We work in a number of other smaller cities. We only work in cities. We're not suburban guys. Do a lot of historic preservation, a lot of residential rehab work in those buildings. And we also have a consulting arm that helps cities develop their revitalization strategies, and that's where we've primarily been working with Chris over the last decade or so. So as we have developed as a firm, and we've been in business about 30 years now, we've become, even though we deal with a lot of downtown housing, historic rehab housing, we've been really focused and to some extent frustrated by the difficulty of providing reasonably priced housing in cities, not necessarily just in downtown, but in the neighborhoods around downtowns and neighborhoods like you have here in Piqua. And part of that frustration is people that are either wanting to downsize, they live in a large house, they'd like us, the kids have grown up, they'd like a smaller home. And it's often hard to find those types of smaller homes in the neighborhoods that they live in, other than maybe an apartment building that might get built there. So their choices are limited. We also know that younger families are having more and more difficulty finding reasonably priced housing in places near where they work. And so anyway, so based on that, we've been working on a product or a set of products that fill those gaps. And I was talking to Chris about this concept, I don't know, a few months ago while we were looking at actually some infill possibilities in South Piqua, and he said, "Hey, there's a site up that near the new school that might be appropriate for that." So we began looking at the site on Nicklin, and that's sort of where we are coming to you tonight. We're very excited about it. We think it fits our model. If you go to, can you go to the next slide? Or do I have a clicker? There we go. Okay, so we think hopefully it meets some of our objectives and might meet the city's objectives. And for the city, the 4 bullets, and there may be others, are to reuse the former school site in a way that complements the existing fabric of the neighborhood, to increase the supply of for-sale homes in Piqua, to provide new housing prototypes that enable existing residents to downsize and modernize and remain there, and to provide homeownership opportunities for new families, others seeking entry, including school employees. We talked to Dwayne in this room probably 2 months ago, and one of the things that he mentioned was the fact that it's hard to attract employees to the school district because of the lack of housing or the lack of housing opportunities. So that's another niche we think this fits into. And again, we've been trying to find a model that works in cities this size. And the pages are a little bit out of order. If you go to page 5, so there's a group of people working all across the country on what's called missing middle housing. So you've got single-family housing on one end, you've got mid-rises or apartment buildings on the other, and in the middle, as I said, there's just oftentimes not very many options, and as the size of a city gets smaller, those options get more and more limited. So there's a range, and you'll see duplexes, fourplexes, townhouses, multifamily, triple-deckers. We focused on this concept called the cottage court because we believe it meets those needs that we just mentioned pretty well. And if you go back to page 3 right here, I'm sorry they're out of order. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about smaller homes, new homes that are built at grade, so there's no steps, there's no issues with accessibility. They're more reasonably priced because they're smaller, and that means that the maintenance costs are lower, the heating costs are lower, all new systems, a small backyard or a courtyard that doesn't require much maintenance, and the ability to increase as a family increase in the size of the house or the amenities as families mature, or as older people like me have grandkids and want to have a space for them when they come. But the concept of the cottage court really is 10 or 12 or 15 homes along this front pedestrian way. Some people call it a mews, some people call it a court, but instead of having houses sort of lined up along a street and your front entrance is on the street, your front entrance in these cottage courts are onto a very nice pedestrian space with your neighbors across the street. So in a sense, the public part, the sort of interaction with your neighbors, is in the front rather than the back. And the houses, as you see, and you might go to the next slide as well, the next page, there's some other examples. They can be varied in size, varied in style, varied in color. People can have garages or can have front porches if they want or don't want. People can have bedrooms on the upper floor, or that could be left unfinished until people have the means to do that. So that makes the houses more flexible in terms of design features, in terms of price, and in terms of the type of units that an individual might want, or the type of amenities they may want based on their particular, stage of life. But they're more affordable because the basic building is pretty much the same. These changes can be added or not, and that makes the price either lower or higher depending on what they want. So the nice thing about this is that you can add more homes into an area, but they're still single-family homes, so it's not overly dense. You're not living in an apartment building. You still have the features of a private home. It's just a smaller, newer, more easily accessible home with more interaction potential with your neighbors. And as we looked at, can you go to the next slide? One of the things we found about Piqua is that the area surrounding your school site, there are a lot of existing properties that look a lot like the kinds of cottages we're talking about. This happens to be on Park Avenue, Park Street. But even around Nicklin, there's a number of single-family homes that are very nice, that are somewhat smaller than the rest of them. But those are the types of homes we're talking about. And these are primarily one story, but there is an option for a second story. And the way we've initially designed these cottages, there's a couple of bedrooms on the first floor. There's a second floor that could either remain unfinished, which means the price is lower. It could be finished for a bedroom if somebody wants an additional bedroom. It could be finished out for 2 bedrooms. So they could be anywhere from 2 to 4 bedrooms, but the look and the feel really is a cottage, much like these that are on Park here. Next slide. So we looked at the site. The site is sort of the right size for 2 of these courts. And if you go to the next slide, we began to analyze the site in terms of how it might lay out. And there's 2 issues. I may be getting into too much detail, I'm sorry, but I get excited talking about these things. So there are these courts that go from Nicklin to Walker, but then on the edges of South Street and Gill Street, there are more traditional houses that face out. So the whole development isn't looking in. So that those homes, go to the next slide, please. Next slide. Right. No, okay. So here are the courts like those pictures you saw before. There's 2 courts, but then there are 8 homes, maybe it's 6, maybe it's 8, we can figure that out, along Scott and along Gill, that are part of this development, but they're more like the homes across the street. They could be larger, they could have garages, they could have more bedrooms. It really depends on, what the market could bear. So there's flexibility both within these courts and on the edges in terms of meeting the demands of the neighborhood, whether that's people in the neighborhood that are looking to downsize, new school employees, young families that want a reasonably priced house near where they work or near where their kids go to school, near the park. You've got a wonderful park nearby. We just think it's a great location for this type of flexible housing, I guess is the way to phrase it. Next slide. Again, this is just a pretty crude rendering, but again, you've got more traditional homes facing out in the street. You've got these 2 interior courts. They're public, they're open, so there's no issues about gated communities. They're just locations and environments that encourage sort of interaction with your neighbors. And some people don't like that, then they probably won't be interested in this. A lot of people are, but there's a difference in terms of interacting with your neighbors in your own single-family home as opposed to having to live living in an apartment building with your neighbors. So we're very excited about this. We love working in Piqua. We love to develop. This is a new product for us. And we would like to, there's lots of opportunities to trot this out. We think Piqua is just a great spot for us to work with you and work with the city. The other thing I might mention, or Chris might want to mention, is that this is how we would fill out your site. But these cottages, they can also be infilled in lots of other places, in other neighborhoods and in Piqua. So, we're working in South Piqua. There probably are, 24 vacant lots that you can, I would say plop these in. That's not the right word, but infill to help stabilize those blocks in those neighborhoods, and for the same types of markets that we think. What we've been hearing, we spoke to some realtors. Chris knows the city better than anybody. That there would be a market for this type of environment, certainly in this location and perhaps others. So if this is something that the board would like us to pursue, we would love to do that. We would probably spend about 6 months sort of working this out, and then hopefully starting construction probably next fall, or maybe next summer. Part of the problem now is the price of materials is just off the board. So, the types of materials we use, all of that sort of has to be worked out. On our projects, we're sort of hoping in 6 months or 9 months that will either hopefully come back to where it was, or at least stabilize, so we can have a better sense of pricing. But we think generally the pricing of these would be comparable to what the prices are of the homes that are selling and valued in the neighborhood right now.
Barry, do people buy a plot and then work with you on the design, or do you design it and build them and then people come?
Yeah, well, we're sort of figuring that out right now, but I think the concept would be almost like a subdivision. There'd be sort of a basic design, and then if there are hopefully there'd be interested buyers ahead of time. Then if people want a front porch or a garage or a carport or a courtyard or a second floor built out, the best thing would be to work that out so that it would be a custom home, but the basic building block would be the same. So we gain the efficiency of, we're not building 6 different types of homes, we're building one. And those are features, just like if you bought a home in a new subdivision, you have a choice of granite countertops or quartz or whatever. This would be a little bit different, but it would be more how much, do you want more house or less house, or have the ability to add to that house yourself later on? But we've designed is there one more sheet? Yeah, so again, this is an early design, but each of the homes here, there is space behind them for a garage, or for a carport, or for a courtyard, or for a little garden if they want that. We can make some assumptions. I would think most people in Piqua would want a garage, but if somebody doesn't, they want to make that a little office, or have more of a play space for their kids, that can be accommodated. There's smaller lots, but the ability in that smaller space behind to mix and match 1 or 2 of those amenities or additional features.
Do you have a projection on how long you think it would take to develop that area?
I think so there's 2 options here. One is once we start, we'd probably do it in two pieces. One court and then the other court. And I would think probably each one would be 6 to 9 months. Again, that depends on the efficiency. So probably, or if there's enough demand, we could do it all at once, and that actually is better for pricing, because you get a better price for 36 homes rather than 18. But it would be pretty much a year, maybe a little slower, maybe a little longer, depending upon demand, depending upon pricing materials. But the beauty of this is, at least for pricing, is that our partner, we're going to use a contracting partner. So it's somebody that understands what we're doing and understands quality, and it's not going to be a bid process. Is that they know they're going to be able to build, 36 units, and if there's one model or one or two with these sort of additions, then they can price all that up front, which is a benefit for us, but ultimately a benefit for the purchaser, because we're trying to keep these homes, as low priced as possible, and trying to. So I should have gone back a little bit. I'm sorry. One of our frustrations when I talked this morning about dealing with these types of homes is that when people talk about affordable housing, oftentimes it's someone's going to build a home or an apartment or whatever, and then other governmental entities would subsidize it. So you build whatever it is to cost, you're building it, and then you're subsidizing it. Our approach is, if we can build them more efficiently and keep the price down, you don't need subsidies. This isn't a low-income neighborhood; it's a market rate neighborhood. But if we can figure out the inefficiencies of development to keep the cost down and keep the price of the land down, because we're buying it from a public entity, then all that gets translated into a lower price to the buyer. Doesn't help us, other than they're more saleable if the prices are lower.
I think it's a nice concept that it seems like you can have a one-story cottage, you can have a two-story, very similar to what goes down in that area. That's kind of the nice thing about it. It'll fit in there and be a little different concept in that little, there's a couple or three blocks there that it takes up.
Yeah, we were really surprised when Chris, because we've been working on this in our office in Louisville, these cottage designs, knowing that we'd have to amend them slightly depending on the neighborhood. And then when Chris said, let's go take a look at this spot, and we looked at the existing fabric, it was almost as if we were designing these for that neighborhood, which I guess you knew when you saw them. But we were really pleasantly surprised about that.
So these really won't be spec houses, they'll be, the customer comes to you and
Probably,
says,
yeah.
this is what I want.
Yeah. We might have to build a few out to show this concept of a court is new to a lot of people, so we might have to build one side of it or half of it just to show what we mean by that. But yes, the goal would be, there's a basic building envelope, and then we can adapt that based on, within that envelope, on what the preference is for any individual buyer.
So
And
there wouldn't be empty houses sitting there waiting for buyers. You build it when you
Yeah,
have it.
there might be a couple, again, if we start just
Right,
to show
but
the model.
It's not going to be a whole
Yeah.
development just sitting.
No, and we wouldn't want that, you wouldn't want that, the bank's not going to allow that. So it's everybody aligns up in that. The other thing I should mention is that the concept here is that these are on, they're fee simple homes. You have your own lot, okay? It's a smaller lot than most lots, but you own your home, you own the lot. If there's the sort of common maintenance of these green spaces, there'd be a homeowners association, but it would really just relate to that common space as opposed to anything that relates to you'd be responsible for your home just like any homeowner would be, except it's a smaller home and it's a newer home, so hopefully the maintenance costs will be, the operation costs will be low because they're smaller and we design these for energy efficiency. But the normal maintenance would be low just because they're new, they'd be new homes as opposed to remodeling a home you may be living in or have lived in for 20 years.
Now, what would the kind of range of those homes be price-wise? Do you have kind of an estimate?
Yeah, I think we're ideally we'd be looking sort of in the mid 100s, sort of 140, 160, somewhere in that range. It's hard to price them now
Right.
because but when we started this, and we started working on this in the office about a year ago, before the whole, craziness in prices, that's about what we were looking at. So if you want a garage, you want a second floor build out, it'll be a little more than that. But sort of that's the range that we think makes sense, and seems like it fits. We've talked to a couple of realtors. It seems like there'd be smaller homes that are for sale now, but that's about the price range that we see. But
Right. And is that kind of, that fits that area too, Chris? What's the average around that area price?
price point wise, it fits the neighborhood really well.
Yeah, it looks like it would, yeah.
It's comparable, but it's lifting up the valuations, it's not bringing things down.
Right.
And part of what makes us really excited about this, you know, we're actually rewriting some of our development standards right now to support innovative approaches to filling housing needs just like this. And this product, to me, is a great opportunity when we're talking about workforce issues and talent retention and talent attraction. You know, a lot of those folks are, they're not ready for you know, something that costs more than this.
Mhm.
But this would be very appealing to them. And actually, my first house was a block over on Lincoln Street. It was a 900 square foot bungalow, and it was a great starter home for me as a young person out on my own. But I had a huge backyard, and so I spent a lot of time maintaining a lawn that I didn't really benefit from. So this makes sense to me, and I think it fits in the context of the neighborhood contextually in terms of the styling and the architecture and the price point. And so when Barry mentioned that's what they were, you know, something they were working on, and I was thinking about what sites were out there, and I said, well, we should go look at this site. Barry immediately identified it as, hey, this fits really well.
Those little, whatever you call them, very muses or whatever behind that, that's really intriguing too. That's neat to give the community a chance to get together and have some, I'm sure you guys can come up with some things too. That'll be really neat.
So, you know, one thing that we think is nice, and we've looked at models in lots of places where they've done this, more so in the West than here, than in the East, but is that if you live in a, like a condo community, and there's both, you know, maintenance costs of the entire community, or there's a pool or a gazebo or whatever, you know, mostly you're dealing with large communities. You're dealing 100, 200 units, you know. The nice thing here is that these are 16 or 18 homes. So, you know, it's much more personal in terms of, do you want a little gazebo there? Do you want a bocce court, whatever? You're dealing with a small number of people. Hopefully you like each other. But it's not a huge, you know, people are getting tired of condo associations for lots of different reasons. And most of those are not on fee simple lots, which are important to a lot of people. So this is it's like you said, it's a new concept, but it's a manageable one, we think. And, you know, we would rather design 2 or 3 or 4 of these individual ones as opposed to one big one, you know, where there is, you know, 60 homes around a central court, because then you're dealing with, you know, what if kids are noisy and what if people are barbecuing? You don't want to do that. This is really just a small group of your neighbors sort of deciding how much they want to interact with each other or not. But regardless, you've got a nice front lawn. You know, it's not your lawn; it's sort of the lawn of you and 15 others. And we think that's a nice mix, particularly in towns like Piqua, where people know each other and generally like each other, and but still want to stay in the neighborhood, even if they want a smaller, you know, if they want to downsize, still want to have their own home as opposed to a condo or an apartment. And we'll see, you know, we could be wrong, but everything we've heard seems like this is a really good fit in this neighborhood.
I think that makes more sense too, because if you could imagine the size of that lot with just houses around the perimeter, and then how much wasted space would be, I mean, you would have a ginormous yard if that's what they did. So I think this is a good use of that space.
And you've got your money in this fight. You're not grant dependent.
No. This would all be,
things like that fall through.
yeah.
So this is your money in it.
This is our money. We would like the land from you guys as low a cost as possible, because any savings goes to the homeowner. But we know it's appraised at. If that's the price, that's fine. The city though does have, this is CRA community reinvestment eligible. So if you buy a house, one of these homes, you're not paying property taxes on the increase for 12 years, which is kind of nice. So we're using what's already in place, but there's no subsidy, there's no grant. This is a private development that we would develop in concert with the city and with the school board, but not asking for any funding from anybody else to make this happen.
And all of our properties have been appraised, so they're market value.
Our ask tonight is just to approve that the board president, superintendent, treasurer, are able to enter into an agreement to sell the property to Pick, which is, the city of Pick was honored to be able to do these kind of investments.
What do you guys think?
I like it.
Steve?
I like it.
Randy?
There's no downsides right now.
Yeah, I do too.
Do we need to make a motion for that or no? I'll move.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay. So moved. Jeremy, would you like to do a roll call then?
Can I make a comment before you?
Yeah.
Sure.
One of the reasons we need an action by you guys is that when we go to talk to financing entities about this project, the first question they ask is, do you have control of property, or will you when we get to closing? So we need to be able to say, yes, the school board has agreed to sell it to us, or to sell it to Pick, and however you do that, but we will enter into an agreement. So that's why it's important up front to get that. First of all, we need to know if you guys like it.
Right.
But also, we need to be able to say, yes, we have some assurance that if we move forward on this, that property will be there at the property. And we wouldn't close on the property with you or Pick or whoever owns it until we have financing, until we know it's a real project. It's not like, sell us the land tomorrow and then we'll try to do this. We don't do anything until, we don't take any property down if we don't have to, until we know it's a deal. So that protects you, it protects the city, it protects us.
That works for you, be cutting a lot of grass.
I'm done with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Jeremy?
Mr. Frazier,
Aye.
Mr. Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Height,
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye. Okay. Well, measure passes. Barry, Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
You
support.
guys are
for
more
this.
than welcome to stay for the whole meeting, but if you really want to leave, you
I have
can.
to, I'm driving back to Louisville, so.
Yeah, you probably ought to be, yeah.
But I appreciate your.
We'll drive safely.
I appreciate your support for this. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
you're gonna get him out of town. Chris, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Absolutely.
Early tomorrow. Right, it's kind of fast.
okay, next we go to section B here, board reports on the work session. Anybody want to make some comments? A couple comments on the work session?
I thought it was a great use of our time. I think that, as we talked about in there, I think it's a good idea to have those a couple times a year. So
Mhm.
that we can meet as a board and just talk about things, what's working, what's not working, and what can we do better, and things of that nature. I thought it was great.
Good concept, relaxed concept where, we can get things out in the open and say, and discuss it amongst ourselves. I thought that was really informative.
It's a good, we've done it for several years, and I think a lot of good things come out of it.
Really does. Okay. Well, moving on, Mr. Height.
I've got the kind of report you like. We don't meet until Monday.
Yeah. Okay, I have, Mr. Lyons, we have nothing from hearing the public, correct?
Correct.
Okay, well, moving along. Mr. Hill, it's treasurer's report, or agenda, so he's typing everything up here. He's into it, he's ready.
I know, just trying to get myself caught up here. All right, were there any questions about the October financial reports? Next thing we have is 5-year forecast. So, just a couple notes is that there's a positive cash balance projected through June 30th of 2026, which is a good thing. Otherwise, we start getting into those questions from the state about, are you going to keep yourself funded after that? So we're good there. Overall long-term projections have been holding. We're pretty much on target with where we thought we would be. The new fair school funding formula plan, House Bill 111, we don't have exact guidance on exactly what's going to happen until, they're saying the first pay in December, but it could be the second pay in December, where they're going to roll out all the pieces and parts to this, and then we'll start to see what exactly is going to happen. We have projections that they thought would happen, but until the sausage is actually made, I don't know what we're actually going to end up with. So this is based off of the projections, but things could change in December, so we'll see how that goes. Enrollment is going to continue to be a key factor. So some of these things that have happened literally are changing the way our school district is getting funded, because it used to be, well, they're your kid, but then they open enroll somewhere else. The money comes here, then it goes there, or they're your kid, but then now they go to Piqua Catholic, so the money comes here, then we take it over here. Now they're just direct paying all these places, and so our expenses are going to drop, but also our revenues are going to drop. So it's nothing really changes except all the little ins and outs that were occurring that you guys didn't normally see because it was all happening in the foundation formula, and then it just gets spit back out. So there's changes that are going to be coming. The December reports will start showing what ends up happening. For this year, though, for fiscal year 22, I thought it was important just to point out sort of where the biggest question always is, like, what's the state contribution versus what is the local contribution. And so you can see that 52 to 48 is sort of where we're at this point. And it's been as high as 57 to 43. We've had that when we did our construction project. So this is the sort of the pie of where everything comes from. The state foundation, of course, is the biggest chunk of the money. And then on our side, it's real estate taxes and income taxes, which is, we've talked about many times. Expenditure-wise, you can see that wages are over half of what we spend. The benefits are another 21% of that, so you're at 73% of that, and then purchase services is 23% of that. And most of our purchase service amount of money is also personnel. It's just that it's personnel that is purchased at Miami County ESC. So take those pieces into effect, you can see that our supplies and other expenses are relatively small compared to those things. You guys have a copy of the 5-year forecast as well as the notes. And so you've seen like where the numbers are at, but you can see that our expenditures we don't believe should exceed our revenues until FY26. And again, that's just a projection. I wouldn't hang my hat on that as it usually is in the last couple of years of this. We only have 2 years worth of budget data. And so 22 and 23 I feel good about. And then after that it starts to get a little bit more hairy as far as what ends up happening. The state hasn't fully funded the funding model, so who knows what's going to happen 2 years from now. But this is the best guess that we have. And so there's just a warning that deficit spending could happen in FY26. We're going to do the best we can to make that not happen. And then we'll make changes as necessary to continue operating in the black. And this just shows you sort of the ending cash balance as to where we're at versus what the state requires. That little orange bar is what the state requires, and the other bar is where we're at. So we're well above what the state requires for us to be able to operate financially. We need to be vigilant over the next 2 years, again, to make sure that the fair funding formula is fully implemented. I think that's important for all of us to continue to send our letters in and be active in saying that we need to do this, because I think that public education, as I've said before, is sort of under attack, and the more we move through this process, I think we'll find that there's less and less desire to do more for public education, and we're seeing it in many ways as things have been keep coming out of Columbus. I just provided testimony on Tuesday in Columbus on House Bill 126 that basically wants to strip this Board of Education of filing counter complaints against property owners who come in and claim that the property is less than what any of us would think it was worth. And this is especially important for places like Walmart. Walmart has lawyers, lots of them, and they go around, they claim that their building is only worth $100,000, and we're not allowed to fight it anymore, which we've had to do in the past. The mall has done that, which the mall has some legitimacy too, so we don't, and we still fight it, but we don't fight it as hard. But they're like all the renovations that you've seen done at Walmart right now, do you think they've come back and reevaluated that and then tacked on because they did all those changes? Oh no. And now we're not even allowed to say anything about it. That's what House Bill 126 does. So there's a lot of this stuff going on in Columbus that is not in favor of public education, I can tell you that. That's why point number 2, we got to continue to be monitoring that, continuing to be advocating for that. I'll continue to provide testimony where applicable. And the last point is to just keep watching legislation, things like College Credit Plus. But there are lots of little things that continue to cost us more money, like now we're going to have to hire a new person potentially to teach financial literacy. We're going to have to hire a new teacher / I don't know what we want to call them exactly for dyslexia purposes. There's nobody sending more money to do those things. So there are additional hires that will have to come down the pipe just because of the new laws that have gotten passed.
And those are called unfunded
Unfunded
mandates.
mandates.
Yes.
So,
That term's around a lot.
and it just keeps happening. Oh, and by the way, only public education has to do this. Private education, not out. So, that's quite a reason. Anyways, I'm always happy to take questions. My contact information is up there for the public. If they ever want to talk, I'll be happy to talk to them about it. Good news is we're in financially healthy shape at this point in time. We do appreciate our community in passing our ballot issue that we had on the beginning of November. We couldn't do it without your support. We would greatly appreciate it, and we wouldn't be in the shape we're in without them. So we appreciate their help on that. Any questions about the fire report? Okay, next item I have on there is a fund-to-fund transfer. This is to get us evened up with where we need to be at this point in time. There was an issue with the debt schedule that made me think that we weren't, the next amount to get us to where we need to be was in March, but it's actually behind schedule. Anyways, this is a balloon payment, so this is just getting that number caught up to where we need to be. It needs to be then another $250,000 in March. However, we discussed at our meeting that we are going to defease our bonds on this in March, and so we'll pay off all of that, and we will not really have to transfer more money after that point. We'll go ahead and pay that off and not have to continue carrying that debt. So I'll bring that to you in February to discuss further. So this is just to take care of what we need to have on hand for now, and then we'll take care of the rest of that in February. And the next item on there is the salary schedule for the executive assistant that is on the agenda for approval tonight. Any questions about that? That's all that I have.
Okay. Well, roll call. Mr. Hiddle, as a motion for us to
So moved.
roll call.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Hiddle, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
Mr. Boston.
Aye. Okay. Measure passes, and we're, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Superintendent's report.
We shared in August some of the things we were doing to get us caught up with all the COVID things that had happened. We were using ESSER funds to do some of the programs that we had in place, and we talked about some of the academic coaches that we put in place. And now that our first quarter is done and some work's happened, I thought it would be nice if Kiera, who directs that work, could give you guys a little bit of a summary on what's happening and give you a chance to ask any questions and see some of the progress we're making with those. So with that, we'll do Kiera Williams.
Thank you. Good evening to you all. thank you for this opportunity. At the beginning of the year, we did do a really brief summary of what we intended for the coaching team to look like. And since then, we kind of started working on this infographic, if you will. If we could try to communicate to people on one sheet what we're trying to do. This is really what the intent of this is. The bridge is kind of our image that we try to hold on to, because we want the work that we're doing to sustain long after the coaches are actually operating this capacity. Once they go back into the classroom and the funding is gone or redirected, we want the work to not just benefit us right now, but long after that. So this is just a brief summary of the different types of coaching or support that the teams, teachers, the principals, the buildings, individual teachers may be able to provide, because there's a lot of different challenges. Obviously, because of COVID, some of the things that COVID has done, you know, there were projects or initiatives that the curriculum department, principals, the buildings were working on pre-COVID. And obviously everyone had to make things work the best that they could last year. Some things kind of got unraveled. Now we're trying to begin to put those pieces back together, and we know that our schools, our teams, and our principals need support to do that work. So we shared this image with the principals first, then at the DLT. And we wanted to try to explain that there are different types of coaching. I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but just want to help you understand that to kind of diffuse a myth that coaching is only for the struggling teachers or the teachers that aren't that great, or just certain teachers, especially now because of what the impacts of COVID have been, that really everyone can benefit from coaching, because everyone has challenging situations or things that they're trying to overcome as a result of COVID. But when we first entered into this work, the goal was student learning. And there's all different ways that you can support teachers, but as you can see, the bullseye in the middle, I got a little pointer there, yeah, and right there in the middle, student learning. If you want to impact student learning the best, or the most impactful way to impact student learning, is a model called student-centered coaching. And that's where the teacher and the student, the teacher and the coach really partner together. It's not about let me come and fix you, or let me observe you and see what you're doing that needs to be improved, but we both know that there are complex problems. Let me come to your classroom, let me plan with you, let me help you, let me actually come in and help you with this work with your students. And that's really the main thing about student learning. You may see or hear the teachers doing other types of coaching. We know these things are necessary too. We partnered with the curriculum department to help them with projects because there's only 2 of them, and there are things that with 10 extra hands makes work much lighter. We know that there's things where obviously when you have administration, you have teachers, there's a space in between. We know we're able to collect that information from the teacher's perspective, get their ideas, go into the classroom, observe, and bring recommendations to the curriculum department and cabinet in terms of moving forward, what would be the best course of action, evaluating some of our programs, what does it look like for students, how is it impacting our students, is that what we want, before we just come up with something brand new and throw out some of that good stuff that we knew worked before COVID. So you will see the coaches still doing some of that other things, but our goal is to spend the majority of our time focusing on that student-centered coaching, focusing on student learning to make sure that students are learning, that some of those gaps are getting closed as a result. Okay. And so the next couple, the next couple slides are just some pictures or some specific accounts or examples of the things that are happening in the buildings. These numbers up here are really just a rough estimate. I asked the coaches to go back and think back what are the totals of the things that we've done? And as you can see, they've been quite busy in just a short period of time. But these are pictures of some of the projects that they've been working with the principals on. They meet weekly with the principals to hear from them where they would like to go, how can they support better. They sit in all the teacher-based team meetings, listening to the teachers, and of course they meet individually with teachers in all these different types of ways. And here's some quotes from some of our teachers. My day was saved, and I quote, "I've learned more from you than I ever learned in college." That was from one of our new teachers. And I asked the coaches to send me this. They were in emails, and I just copied and pasted them. "Thank you so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated," and so on. I could really go on and on. These are pictures of some of the specific projects that we worked with curriculum on, or things, we have curriculum resources that were somewhat inaccessible to the teachers because they require so much extra time to actually get them in the students' hands. And so, for example, this picture up here is one of those examples. I don't know if you've ever heard of decodable books that help the young kids read at their level. Teachers had to print those. And the copier is, in order to get these out in a way that the kids can actually use them, was a very complex process. So the coaches spent a day to figure all that out, that most teachers don't have time to do, and they were able to upload it in the drive, and that has solved a lot of problems and saved the day in a lot of cases. And I think that's it. Some of the other things, I've done this with the principals and with the DLT, and there's some other slides, but for tonight, I just wanted to make those main points. So if you guys have any questions, I will take those now, but what we hope is that as we move through the rest of the year, even next year, we'll have more specific data points to give you in terms of what we're doing and how it's impacting. Because the coaches are still learning, but they've been amazing. They've jumped right in there, and they've been very flexible in terms of meeting every teacher that reaches out, every principal, right where they are and what they need.
Is this concept being used in other school districts?
Concept of instructional coaching? Absolutely. It's not new. It's actually all over the world, really. There's different models. You might see some variations of how the coaches are used specifically. Sometimes they're used to just support implementation of new programs or certain category of teachers. There's a lot of different approaches. For us, when it was made clear that we want to impact student learning, then that set us in the direction that we're going. We are seeking out some expert advice from others. For example, we met with another coach from down the road to kind of pick her brain today, and the coaches are involved in a lot of training, but instructional coaching has been around for quite some time.
I subscribe to it's a email service called the Marshall Reports, and they'll take the top 10 to 20 articles in education that week, and they'll compile them into one report, and they'll send them to people. And I think the last probably 3 weeks, coaching articles have come up that have been really relevant, so I always copy that article out, send it to her, and then she'll take it to the coaches. So it's been kind of neat to see that correlation and how we parallel the other work.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question, thank you. Are there any other questions at this time?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wanted to share a little bit, again, we're at the end of the first quarter, and I know you guys are all aware because you follow our district, but just for the sake of our viewers, it's been really great to see our kids in the extracurricular programs that they've had. They've just had such a great fall season from all of our sports to all of our programs. Currently, our football program continues to go on into the playoff season. Our marching band had a great season. They received superior ratings through everything and got a superior at state. Got to go to Grand Nationals, as well as our show choir did their first premiere and got Grand Champion, and really cleaned house in all those. So I think a lot of that really has to do with the fact that our kids stayed engaged last year. We kept open. We really opened up this year and tried to get the community back engaged with our students and vice versa. So I really credit our teachers and staff and coaches for working with our kids and keeping that process going really strong, because I think it really paid off. Scott and I were talking the other day even about some of our data that came back, and value added is one of those pieces where it shows our ability to grow students. So even though we stayed open, we struggled with quarantining. We had a lot of sickness. We had over 800 kids that went to remote learning. So there were a lot of interruptions that still we have to overcome, but the value added results coming back showed the work that our staff has done too. And I'll let Scott talk just a little bit more about that because he tracks that data, but it was pretty good to see what came back.
It was, and I'll just bring this around here. And while I do that, just as a reminder, we did resume state testing last spring after a hiatus due to school closures. And one of the things that people oftentimes overlook is that we get two sorts of measurements when it comes to our state assessments. The first is what you see on a report card. That is the passage rate for each of those assessments. The second, and that's what we see when we measure how we did on ELA, math, science, whatever it is. The second one is what you have in front of you, and that is the teacher's growth measure. Basically what that's saying, without getting too statistical about it, is how did our kids do in comparison to other kids in Ohio who test in the same area, the same grade level, and start the year like they do. So what that measure really tells us is different than how many passed that test. It tells us how did our teachers do moving those kids forward in comparison to all the other kids in Ohio. We use both of those measures to do a lot of different things. We use the achievement side, how many tests did we pass, to say where are we on that indicator. We put as much weight, if not more, on this side because it really does tell us, are the things that we're doing in the classroom effective? Are we moving the kids forward? So I briefly put this together for you. We could go into, again, hours of detail. No one besides me really wants that. So what I wanted to make sure that we appreciated and we really held up is the fact that when we look at this, 79% of our teachers, almost 78% of our teachers grew our students at least a year or more. And that's really significant. What that means is, even with all of the closures, all of the issues that we had that were COVID-based, 80% of our teachers moved their kids farther in a year than other students around Ohio. And that's significant. That's higher than we've had even pre-COVID. So our teachers not only rose to the occasion, they exceeded it. Again, different than achievement. What this is saying is our teachers moved our kids forward in line. When we look at everything around here, we're at about 89% of our teachers have at least a year's growth, if not more. And that bodes really well for our students. And it means that what we're doing in the classroom every day is setting them up for success. And that's what we look at. And we really want to make sure we elevate the recognition for our teachers that this was a really good set of outcomes for them. I also wanted to point out, and I put this in sort of the green area there, we do get measured in the growth in the assessments as well. And it's important to note that 10 out of 13 of our assessments showed progress of a year or higher. 8 out of 13 showed more progress than expected. A little bit different. That's sort of a composite of all of those teachers together. So out of 8 out of 13 of our state assessments, we were over a year's growth for all students who took that assessment. Again, all positive indicators, and it's something that we want to make sure that we recognize. I went right down to Dwayne and said, hey, we need to make sure the teachers know this is great. This was a really good job on their part. Now let's build on this and let's keep going forward. So I just want to say how impressed I have been to see how our teachers have persevered, and our students, our community, with all of the things that happen, and we still see this kind of growth. That's a real testament to their work, and I think it's important that we recognize it. I know this is a lot of information in a short amount of time. If you ever have questions and you want to know more about value added and how it's calculated, what we do with it, I'm always very happy to have that discussion at any time with anyone, and would welcome any kind of discussion on that. So Thank you.
Scott, thank you. And, you know, I think you brought up a great point tonight, because I think so many people in the state, parents, they just look at their report card and they see, you only passed 3 indicators. But Dwayne has really tried this at the superintendent's meetings, the ones where he took me to meet the legislators. They're all about that performance score, you know, rating. Where are you at with everybody else? And this seems to take a back seat, the actual growth of a child's learning. And that's what we're trying to get people to really understand, that's as important. You know, that they are growing, they're expanding their learning, so.
I think the real treasure in the teacher's work shows too that when you look at our kindergarten readiness assessment scores, which are the scores of kids coming into school, so it has nothing to do with what happened when they were here, how they were taught. They're always the lowest in the county, and they rank pretty low. We talked a little bit this year about how far kids are behind coming into the school year, so they don't get tested until 3rd grade. So all that work between K through 2, and even in 3rd grade, is so tremendous that we're still making those gains, even though we're behind the 8 ball with kids coming into our schools. It's huge. It's something that the state never takes a look at. You never see that on a report card. You never see that comparison. So some communities that might start off with an 80% passage rate in crawl scores still have that in 3rd grade. So there's not growth. If we're starting down here at the 60 percentile, but then getting up here, it's a huge growth. It's a really a big deal. So it's a great tribute, you're right, to the work that our teachers are doing in the classroom.
It is. So again, I'd be happy to answer anything in depth that you'd ever want to see. And just please contact me if you'd like to. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Scott.
Scott. The last thing I had was, in working with our student board representative, Nolan, he had shared an idea with me that I thought he would like to present to the board tonight and give you a sense of kind of what he was thinking, see what you guys think. Nolan?
Yeah, thank you. So Mr. Thompson, Mr. Bloom hit it pretty right on. Talking about rewarding and recognizing students and teachers and even community members for their hard work and efforts. It actually started with Mr. Bostic saying that I should read all the board policies and memorize them and everything. And there was something in there about the board has the right to recognize students. And I kind of dug into that a little bit deeper, and the school district that I attended before Piqua had, they called it the Roar Award. So every month they would recognize a student, a community member, or just a teacher for the great things they're doing. And I thought that would be something that would be pretty neat to bring here to kind of show off the great things that are happening that may kind of be covered up by all the ugly numbers of things.
What do you guys think?
Would that be one person or one student or one teacher, you know, one supplemental?
Yeah, so that's the great thing. There's no rules. You can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Sound like my kind of deal.
Who would pick it? How do they choose, or how do you
They
see us doing
chose
that?
the amongst the board members. Yeah.
Okay.
So somebody would nominate them, like a principal would nominate?
Yeah, sometimes there's nominations, or if you see something that's happening that you like, and you can recommend it amongst each other.
Like that.
Well, good idea.
Yeah, thank you.
That was a great idea.
Yeah. Well, there's no better time to start that with somebody but other than you, because you've done a really good job this year. Not
Well,
only
thank
were
you.
you elected to our board as a student representative, but you were actively engaged in sports. You're doing great in school, but you also ran for an office in our community. And I know you didn't get the outcome that you wanted, but I got to tell you, you were an absolute inspiration to a lot of people in this community, because it's not many times that a young person jumps up and says, I want to do something like you did. And you took a great risk, and you ran a great campaign. It was very positive. You had a lot of people supporting you, and it was a really fun thing to watch you do. But you inspired more people than you probably will ever know, Nolan.
Well, thank you. I really
do.
appreciate it.
So Clint wants to recognize you as our first person that we're going to recognize at a board meeting. So, Mr. Bostic?
Yes. You know, one thing that gets me, you know, you hear so much about, you know, kids, all teenagers are, but I'll tell you what, this young man is just, he really is not afraid to try new things. He gets involved. I don't know. I don't know when you sleep, but, somehow I guess you
He
do.
owns his own business.
Yeah, I know. He's incredible. And I know I had lunch with him one day, and it was a joy. It was unbelievable. I mean, he is a phenomenal young man. So, come on over here. I'd like to present something to you. We have a certificate of accomplishment proudly presented to Nolan Campbell. And Nolan, you're the first guy we want to recognize.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
He's really at it a lot. I think when we were talking about getting a student rep on board, we were talking about, we don't know, and Dwayne put the feelers out and had an interest, and I'll tell you what, we got a good one. So
Thank you.
he's setting the bar high for everybody. So thank you, Nolan.
Thank you.
That's a great way for me to end my report.
Okay. Now your agenda, correct?
Yes.
You flew right in.
Sure. Recommend the board approval of the attached list of donations for Piqua City Schools. We had some donations for our football program, for some signage, and as well as True North does something called the Giving Pump, where a little bit of percentage of people buying gas will come to us. They recognize a different school each month, and we got some money from them as well. So appreciate that. And then recommend board approval of the attached list of technology equipment for disposal and removal from the inventory of Piqua City Schools. As always, Eric standing over there, he can contest, they strip that stuff of anything that we can use and reuse. They have a space that they store all that, and they use those parts to fix a lot of different things. And then what's not able to be fixed, we'll recycle. So that's what that list is for you. And recommend board approval of the enrollment of Olivia Bersali, who is an Italian exchange student that will be coming to our high school. That's it.
Okay. Well, entertain a motion to,
So moved.
okay,
Second.
okay. Mr. Hiddle, if you would roll call, please. I just love the way he builds his suspense. He really.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye.
Lots of things to type and click.
Okay, measure passes. Okay, we are now at Mr. Lyons with the personnel agenda.
Thanks, Mr. Bostic. The one person I want to point out tonight, number 2 on the personnel agenda, is Beth Kane. She has been a person who's given every ounce of energy she has into getting our transportation department to a place where we're always compliant, we're always legal. It's a ton of work. If you haven't, stop in the morning or the afternoon and watch it happen, because it's incredible out there how they get stuff done. So anyway, she retires December 17th, and we're definitely going to miss her, so congratulations on her retirement. You have some information about the candidates or things that are on the personnel agenda. Anybody have any questions?
What's the girls' program? What's the numbers in the girls' basketball program?
I can't tell you right now. I don't know off the top of my head how many kids are in the program right now. Yeah. We do have the asterisk available for girls' basketball if we need to add people, just like some of our other sports, because the program's gotten so big that we have to add additional support for those coaches.
And also subtract or just
Yes.
add?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's always dependent upon enrollment, because
Right.
we don't want to just pay for everything if it's not needed, and if we need more, then we need more. I mean, obviously, safety and supervision is important, so
Absolutely.
it's always dependent upon numbers.
Which has been nice to be able to utilize, because in some areas we have seen some growth and been able to add some people too. I'll find out the total numbers. Other questions?
Questions, anybody? Okay. Well, with that, entertain a motion to accept the personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Hill?
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
You didn't go with the suspense on that one, so we
I got
Got-
caught
You
up.
got caught up while I was talking.
Yeah.
More time.
That's right, so he did. Okay, old business. Mr. Thompson?
Just recommend the second approval. This would be the final one of the board policy changes. And again, these were little legal statements. It doesn't change any meaning of anything. There's nothing new here other than just correcting and keeping things updated, which Neola does for us each year. So,
Right, and Nolan, I have for you, one of them that is being updated, that I caught when I looked it over, is the student mental health and suicide prevention is being updated by them. So I brought a copy for you, so you
thank
would
you.
have that. Another one to memorize, and he's probably got them memorized.
what's
Wouldn't
the
doubt.
test?
If he does, I'm gonna just call him instead of trying to figure it out.
That's right, just call Nolan, yeah.
I'll send it straight to voicemail.
Yeah, you will.
Okay, well, this one we can just do orally, or
Nope, we'll vote for it.
vote for it on, okay. Well, motion,
So moved.
Second?
okay. Mr. Hill, you wanna?
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye. Okay. Now we're to new business. Mr. Thompson?
Would like to recommend the board approval of the donation of .005 acres of land for a crosswalk signal upgrade on the corner of Park and Nicklin Avenue. So if you can imagine where the sign is, yeah. If you can imagine where the sign is for Piqua Central, there's just a little corner snippet. It's literally like right across here. But they need that to do an improvement for the crosswalk area there. They need the property to be able to do what they need to do. It's not going to affect anything we have. We bought that property originally from Park, where the old hospital was, for $1 from the city back before the intermediate was built. I would recommend that we turn that over to them so they can complete that, which will benefit our students ultimately anyway. So,
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the Safe House School, right?
correct, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll just make it safer and better there,
Yeah,
which we need at dismissal and drop-off.
absolutely.
Definitely. Any questions, anything, anybody? Well, entertain a motion.
So
We're gonna,
Second.
okay. Jeremy, if you would, please.
Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye. Okay, measure passes. Mr. Thompson?
Do you want to do the next one, Mr. Little, since you worked on that one?
Sure. So it's no secret, the high school sign is old, i.e. it's almost 20 years old. By the time we actually get this installed, it'll be right at 19 years old. And it doesn't work very well, and we're constantly trying to get it fixed. It has a modem dial-up that Eric is letting me know that is a bit of a problem as well. And if you go look at the junior high sign, of course, they don't have a digital display at all whatsoever, and the block in that sign is failing. So something has to be done to it because it's crumbling. So Rob started negotiating with the sign guy, and then I picked up the negotiations. I can tell you that I have been able to get a really nice sign for a really good price at this point. I think they've shipped them down about as far as we can go. Having the board meeting tonight was part of getting that deal done. So I'm asking that we approve buying 2 signs, one for Piqua High School, one for Piqua Junior High, one at the end of Tomahawk and one at the end of Indian, to replace the 2 signs that are out there now.
Did this go out for bid?
It did not. Initially, it came back, the price was well under $50,000. We did not put it out for bid. It all came from, which you'll see in December, we're working with Daktronics to do the video scoreboard and all that. So this all came from that whole process. And the quantity of signs and stuff that we're buying, we went ahead and started working with, and if we buy these, because we knew that we needed to do that.
Right.
So we did not take it out, but I can tell you, price-wise, we're barely paying more than what we did for the ones that we put up when we put the new buildings up. So it's not that much more.
Oh, they look alike, what the new buildings have?
They'll even be better, and they'll be bigger.
It'll actually fit what's out there right now. It'll fit that whole area.
So
It's gonna be really nice for them to have new signage, because if you've seen it now, it's pixelated, there's spots missing, and it's been really hard to keep going with the modem, so. And the junior high's never had the opportunity to put a digital sign out, so this will give them that opportunity.
Are we going to upset a local sign guy who doesn't get a chance to do the work in the community?
So they have Vantage signs, they don't have Daktronics, and I can tell you that from the experiences that we've had with Vantage signs, that I'm not and neither does Eric. We would not buy them again. So it isn't, I mean, Daktronics has their people, this is the guy that they put us in touch with for the digital sites. So, I mean, you know, like certain vendors are, Daktronics or for Vantage, so. And as far as getting bids, I don't know that we'd be able to get more bids from that, because Daktronics, you know, if you're in their region, you're gonna be their sign guy. So, we still give Brian Quinter a lot of work, that's who we're
Yeah.
talking about. So, I mean, he does plenty of stuff for the district, it's not that he doesn't, just, we have not had success with Vantage signs. Those signs at primary buildings have been nothing but a nightmare. It's not his fault, he didn't even install them, we're just saying that those signs are,
Yeah.
I wouldn't buy them.
I was just making sure, because I saw that and I just wanted,
Nope, I love Brian, he does a great job, everyone go get your stuff from Brian, that isn't it, it's just, we're gonna stick with Daktronics from now on. They're a little bit more money, but they work.
Okay, any more questions? Well, motion,
So moved.
second.
okay. Mr. Hiddle?
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye. Okay, next one, go ahead.
Yes, conversation about using schools for election polling places. We did that several years ago with some of the safety issues that came about over time. They've moved out of the schools, and rightfully so. Having been a principal where there was a polling place before, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for parking, for traffic flow. You got to try to keep students separated. You can't run bells. You can't do a lot of different things when polling's taking place. So we haven't done that for a while. Well, recent times with elections, with COVID happening, the Board of Elections have a concern that when they have a contract with a private entity such as a church or maybe like the YMCA or something like that, those people can get out of their contracts within a 30-day period prior to the elections, which could leave them in a hard spot and have to shift some things around. So to avoid those kinds of things, they've reached back out to schools in Miami County trying to seek the opportunity to use schools again for polling places. So before school started, I went around to all of our school locations with a couple of people. They looked at them. We tried to determine if they were good locations or not. At the time, we kind of thought maybe the back gym, the auxiliary gym for the junior high could be a good location. There's parking in the back there. They could go right into that location. They could vote. They could leave. There's not a lot of traffic in that area, and it wouldn't be much of inconvenience to the school. There would be no mixing of students in the public, et cetera. We could lock it off, and it would be a safe thing. The schools were all challenges. So we kind of left it at that, and then I got a letter from the Board of Elections saying that they're still very interested, and their suggestion would be that we shut school down on election days and maybe do like a professional development. So the challenges we still face is if I didn't have students come in and we just did professional development, if you think about Spring Creek, for example, if you've been there during a normal day, the lot's full. There's nowhere else for people to park. So if the staff was there and we were doing professional development, we're still not going to have the ability to put people there. Go to Piqua Central, it's a full lot. We wouldn't have the kids, we wouldn't have a lot of the traffic that you would see flowing around, but even if the staff tried to park around the perimeter, you still have very limited space in terms of where they could park. The same is very true with Washington. You know what the traffic looks like up there. So having people coming voting really would make it a much more uncontrolled kind of a traffic flow in terms of what we do for school and how we control that. So my concern is if we don't have students come in and we have staff come in for professional development, we're not still going to make it easy for voters unintentionally because of all the parking issues. Then there's also the inconvenience of parents with young kids having to find childcare, where they're going to take the kids. We've done a really good job, I think, with our calendar over the last few years of putting all of our professional development before or after school starts, so we don't do a lot of stuff during the school year. Sometimes you'll see school calendars where they'll shut down for professional development or get out 2 hours early, and those are important things for teaching, don't get me wrong, but when you do that, parents struggle sometimes with where they're gonna put their kids, where they're gonna take them. So those are my two concerns. I don't know that we fix the problem if we shut school down, but still do professional development, which we have to put our time in. So I don't know that it fixes that problem. So my question to you is, do you want us to consider shutting school down for 2 voting days? Or we don't have to do that. We could move forward with our normal calendar. I can let them know that we're not gonna be able to really accommodate voters well because of the scenario we have, and we would continue our calendar as the way it is.
Well, that's another factor with that too. If they're gonna be coming in voting in those precincts, what are they gonna do with their kids? Leave at home? Or, 'cause if they would close down, so that's gonna be, also another.
I would go with the second. I would just move forward.
I think we go until they absolutely come in with the National Guard.
Yeah. Well, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
What's the sense from other districts in the county?
I've talked to a few other districts that have been asked. They're not in favor of it. From what I've heard, I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody, but they are going to face the same challenges that we are. First and foremost, if we have kids in the building, it's a huge safety factor, and it's not one that we would really want to entertain at all. And they're cognizant of that. They're just trying to say, hey, could you close the school and maybe do professional development, since they know we have to put so many hours in. We can't just give everybody that time off, and that affects everything too. So we're required so many hours. We're also paying staff, so we're required to provide that for our auditing purposes that time. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody to consider.
I was at Favorite Hill where they voted for years. Dwayne was there too, but they took my office. They had their stuff stored there. They would store the election machinery on shelves in my office. So I had to close down. And as we went, there were problems in the lounge because teachers would want to come in and relax or eat at a time. And they wanted in there. They thought that should be their lounge. And then and with kids going, and then teachers, they'd come through and say, you got to remove those signs. Those posters have to come down. Your room's got to be redone. It just got to be, because they felt that could influence a voter. I mean, that's just a few.
You got bathrooms.
Yeah.
Even when we
It's
looked at the gyms, then you're shutting the gyms down. If we tried to separate those, then what are you going to do with kids during the lunchtime where we put them there for gym and et cetera? I mean, there's just so many factors that happen with kids there that would make it very difficult. So we typically start working on our calendar in December and try to bring that to the December board meeting so that we can get that out to the public and the parents so that they can plan for next year. So it's really time for us to look at this and decide where we want to go with it.
If I got enough empty spaces in the mall just to use all the space.
We did drive around. I drove them through the community to see lots of different locations. So there are other locations. Their concern, again, would be if they made a contract with them and it so happened that 30 days before the election, somebody said no, that would be an inconvenience to them to have to
Can't they
communicate.
reword the contract?
I don't know that they can. I don't know. I think they have the right to back out of it within 30 days. If it were a Saturday or a Memorial Day or something that's already, would be no problem, and I know they can't change that, but it's just a real challenge for us to try to accommodate during school time. It's a real challenge.
Even if it's a Memorial Day or a day off, there's still a lot of kids and a lot of staff running around.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Parking and traffic flow is going to be a challenge at any of those 3 elementary
Where
buildings.
did they think we were going to do the professional development?
Yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't get everybody into one location even with the polling places happening that way. Now again, junior high, I think we could do that. I will continue to offer them that back auxiliary gym if they wanted to use that. I think we might have to put one ramp in for handicapped to get up onto the sidewalk. They were willing to help with that, even reline that space back there for good parking. I think that would be a space. I think they were looking at like Edison and Career Center as opportunities too, but that could help alleviate some crowd. But I think there's some opportunities I'm hoping for them out there to work work.
Well, the parking at the Career Center would be worse.
Correct. Yeah. And that's why we don't use our library and other spaces downtown that some towns do use, because it's a parking issue or handicap accessibility.
I'd say go ahead with the calendar
Yeah.
myself.
Okay.
With Andy and Steve,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
do we need to vote on this? Or just
No,
just
I'll,
discuss,
it's
okay.
more of, I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page, and
Yeah.
I'll make sure
Okay.
that they know that we're gonna, not be able to accommodate that, but I'll still offer, like I said, the junior high, if they wanna use that space, I think we can make that one work.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, hearing of the public on non-agenda, I don't have anybody.
Hold on.
And, oh,
I was afraid that we needed to vote on, we already did that.
oh, okay. So now we're at executive session. We are going to go into an executive session. We're not anticipating taking any action. But when we come out, then I guess we'll adjourn, correct? So this part of the meeting is over.
Need a
And
motion.
visitors, pardon?
We need a motion.
Yeah, motion,
So
okay.
moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll go into executive session. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, no.